Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you'll learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline.
And in today's episode, Jacqueline and I are going to have a conversation around the wellness space. We're going to explore what initially attracted us into this area, both as participants and ultimately practitioners, how the space has evolved, and how we've evolved with it. We're also going to spend some time talking about current trends and directions in the space and what they can mean for you. I'm going to start by asking Jacqueline a question. So Jacqueline, compared to you, I'm a relative newbie in this space. I think you've been involved in the space for over 30 years. Maybe I could start by asking you to describe what we mean when we talk about the wellness space. Like, what are we going to be talking about today? What's our focus?
It's a good question. I think that'll evolve over time. But I think when we're describing the wellness space, we're describing or we're looking at all of the adjuncts that exist around Western medicine to help support our wellness. So Western medicine is really designed to help prevent disease. All of these different modalities are the ones that we'll be looking at are designed to promote health. And whether that be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. So it's sort of, it used to be that we would speak to alternative medicines. I can't even bring myself to really use that word anymore because we're looking at systems that have existed for thousands and thousands of years that are different systems that hold us as with an inherent capacity to come back to wellness again and again and again, and to be capable of self-healing. And so what we're looking at is the modalities that exist out there that are there to keep us well and teach us how to stay well.
So when you hear speak about that, things to be included in that category. I know it's a broad category. Things like yoga, shamanism, meditation.
Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. But then there's also massage, sound healing, working with frequency. I mean, there's so many different things out there. I don't even think we'd have time for me to name them all on the show. And I don't know them all either. I only know the ones that I've been exposed to and work with. So yeah, it's all of these different pieces that exist out there that oftentimes what actually happens is that we only turn to when our medical system can't answer the questions that we're struggling with or can't offer us help because whatever's going on with us goes beyond the scope of their understanding, that we end up seeking these different modalities to help support us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just based on how you describe that, I want to ask you what originally attracted you to this space, first as a student and then ultimately as a practitioner?
I think first as a patient.
Ah.
It's interesting that you asked that question, actually, because I was just thinking about it the other day. So growing up, my mom had been diagnosed with colon cancer when I was 13. And up until then, our family had really only known Western medicine. And when she was diagnosed, something happened for her where it was, I need to understand and learn everything that I can about how to get myself well. And so she went the route of Western medicine and the route of opening other doors and exploring what was out there. And so I was sort of by osmosis learning through her, right? Like I was just experiencing her. And to be honest, at the beginning, I think we all thought she was nuts because she was talking about things that just didn't make sense to us. But at about, I think I was probably about 16 or 17, I was diagnosed with PCOS, so just polycystic ovarian syndrome by my doctor.
Okay.
I wasn't menstruating regularly. I was, I menstruate maybe every 6 months. And I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, which could make it very hard to get pregnant and all kinds of other things as life goes on. So I remember going to this medical clinic with my mom to see an endocrinologist. And I was sitting in the medical clinic around many women who were quite a bit older than me, most of whom were struggling with obesity, hirsutism, which is facial hair, and lots of acne. And I remember just sitting there looking at my mom going, that's what's going to happen to me? And then going into the doctor, and I'll never forget, for somebody who, as a young woman, where body image and weight and all of those things were already a part of my sort of psyche, he looked at me and he said something like, this is what's going to be hard for you. The best way for you to be able to become fertile as you choose to have babies is to keep your weight as low as possible. Because the more weight you gain, the more challenge you'll have hormonally and the harder it will be. So I walked out of the office feeling, one, really afraid that what my future looked like was, and that I'd have no control over it, was that I was going to be obese, have hirsutism and acne, and this real awareness that I would be required to be conscious of what I put in my body every day for the rest of my life. And it didn't leave me feeling very well.
No,
I actually
restricted, scared.
Yeah, and psychologically messed up, actually. And so my mom started looking for, well, what else exists out there that can help support your body? And so I remember going to see a kinesiologist who was wonderful, and a Chinese medical doctor. And I think it was about 6 months in. So I worked with a Chinese medical doctor weekly. And about 6 months in, I went in for an ultrasound, and all the cysts on my ovaries had disappeared. And my periods had returned. And PCOS for me became a thing of the past, because I remember thinking it was going to be impossible for me to get pregnant when I was ready to have babies. And it was a one-shot deal. I wasn't even ready to get pregnant. And fertility wasn't an issue. So for me, my foray into this world was that. And actually, I was so moved by that I ended up studying Chinese medicine.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. Through your mother's experience, she had an openness to it. She opened the door for you when you had something come up in your life. You had the openness to walk through it and had a result, and became a believer in it, in a sense.
I did. Yeah. Yeah, I did. And I think that what it opened me to, and I mean, ultimately my career path shifted and changed, and I didn't end up studying traditional Chinese medicine. I studied something else, but within that field. But what it woke me up to was that our bodies are incredible when given what they need, they have the capacity to come back to flow, to come back to health. And all they need to do is be reminded how. We forget. And our world doesn't necessarily, the world that we live in and the way that we live doesn't necessarily support health.
Can you explain that more, what you mean by that? The world we live in doesn't necessarily support health? That's an intriguing comment.
Yeah. So in the form of Chinese medicine that I studied, which is called 5-element acupuncture, we really look at the human body as a microcosm of nature. And we understand the body through an understanding of the natural patterns that exist within nature. And so I say that because, let's just say as an example, on a daily basis, the sun rises and sets. Our body is meant to wake with a sunrise and go to sleep with a sunset. We live in a world, at least in our Western world, where through electricity and other things, we can stay up far past sunset, and we don't need to wake with the sun. And so we push our bodies into places where we stay up really late, or we sleep in for a really long time. And so we're out of sync already, just out of sync with the natural rhythms of nature and the energy of the sun. And so even just that on its own, or let's just say then, okay, so I need to stay up late because I have to study for something, or I have a project to finish, or whatever else. And I don't have the energy to stay up late. What am I going to do? I'm going to drink coffee. Coffee is going to give me a little bit more energy and ability to stay up. In doing so, I'm going to stress my adrenal glands, which actually which need relaxation and go to sleep. And so we're just constantly feeding. Those are simple things. And I mean, those are things we all do all the time. But those are simple ways of being able to look at our lives and just realize that we're constantly manipulating our bodies to do what we want them to do.
To be out of sync with the natural flows of nature,
Well, I think what we're doing is we're constantly manipulating our bodies to work with what we mentally decide that we want. And we're asking our bodies to perform for us all the time, but we're not actually listening to our bodies. And so we push and push and push and push until we crash. And then we wonder why we don't feel well, right? So it's like, in an earlier podcast, we were talking about learning how building trust takes time. Well, building trust with our bodies also takes time. We violate our bodies all the time. We want energy when we don't have energy. And so let's just say we'll go for a run when our body's actually tired. So we push our bodies to wake it up, but we're not actually listening or working with our bodies.
And so what I hear you saying in there is a big part of what we call dis-ease or disease is effectively we're just out of sync with the natural rhythms of nature, with the foods we're eating, the things we're doing, sitting in a desk all day. And the actual symptom that's showing up in our body is a representative of that. And part of this, the wellness space is about restoring the natural body's rhythms, bring us back to being at one with nature and not separate from nature.
That was beautifully spoken. Yeah. I don't even know. I mean, yes, designed to bring us back to being one with nature, but I think it's designed to bring our system back into integrity, right? Yeah. And yes, dis-ease is a lack of ease. It's a lack of flow. We're just in disharmony. And so much of the wellness space is designed to help us come back into harmony with ourselves and with nature. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. And I can can imagine some people hear that, particularly very science-based people, and it sounds woo-woo. But I'm going to come at it from like a very scientific aspect, because I have a science background and I'm a student of quantum morphogenetic physics. And one thing that I observe is, probably our most advanced science is quantum mechanics and quantum physics. And very simply, it says there's just one big unified quantum field, and we're part of it. Everything's part of it. And the manifestation of that field is based on our consciousness. So you and I are not independent from anything in nature. We're all connected in one big field. So if I'm looking at what's wrong with me, I can't look at myself as independent from all of it. It's all related. And I think what we're talking about is very branches of science look at us as very separate and individual units and not related to the broader surroundings. And there's both that's potentially required here.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think in a lot of ways, the holistic field has the word whole in it for a reason. And that is, we are looking at the whole energetic body in conjunction with the world at large, because we're not separate from it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious. You've been involved in this space for over 30 years. How have you seen this space evolve in that time frame? What stands out to
you? It's an interesting question, and I'm not sure that I can answer it. I think I am far more a student of my own experience within the field than I am of the field itself. So I would say to you, I can tell you my best way of answering that question is how my relationship with the field has shifted.
Well, that was going to be my next question anyway. So how have you evolved?
You may be able to, you might be able to answer that question in terms of the space as a whole, but let's go with my experience. Mm-hmm. I think over time, what I will say is that in the last 30 years, the development of, or the availability of different modalities has expanded dramatically. So, there are so many different ways that we can go and expose ourselves to different techniques to help us tap into our own wellness. But you know what? I'm going to take a step back and answer the question I said I'd answer, which is, over time, what's shifted for me is that I was a consumer of the wellness space. When I didn't feel well, when there was dis-ease in my body, and I'm not somebody who really sort of I don't really operate very much on the physical. So what I mean by that is, in all of the times that I've seen an acupuncturist, except for when I was quite young, I'd never go in complaining about what was going on in my body. For me, it was always more about where something psychologically didn't feel quite right, or I felt out of balance. That's what I would go for. Ultimately, I would end up feeling better physically and emotionally. But I always approach this world through the avenue of the emotions. That's my interest.
Yeah,
right?
Which is very different from me, because I wait for something to break in my body to figure out something's wrong emotionally. But anyways, back to you.
Yeah. Well, you and I have always operated differently in that way, which is actually quite a nice balance. But I was a consumer in a lot of ways. So if I didn't feel well, I reached out to whoever I could to figure out what I needed to do in order to feel better. And over time, what's really shifted for me is this awareness that the wellness space has become a very huge consumer space. there is now so much available to people in so many different modalities that your head could spin if you were trying to figure out what direction you wanted to go into in order to help get you healthy.
And is that very different from 30 years ago?
It's very different.
I'm relatively new to this space.
It's very different from my experience 30 years ago, because 30 years ago, everything was woo-woo, right? Mm-hmm. Like my mom was nuts doing the things that she was doing. And over time, all of this has become really accessible.
Yeah, like 30 years ago, there weren't a lot of people doing yoga.
Well, there were a lot of people doing yoga, but it wasn't like it is today.
Yeah, okay.
100%. But there also weren't, sound healers around. I'm sure there were some, but it wasn't like it wasn't like it is today. Today you could go shopping for wellness products and wellness techniques the same way that you could go shopping on Amazon for clothes or toys. And so I think that the wellness space has become quite a confusing space for people. And it's become a space where, if what the intention of the offering is to be holistic and to actually give you something that will, or to teach you something that will bring you into harmony, what it's become is, if I do this, I'm going to feel better. If I do this, I'm going to feel better. So I'm going to take this pill and this pill and this pill. And I'm not actually saying I'm taking a pill, but I'm going, if I do yoga, then I'm going to be well. If I do sound healings, I'm going to be well. If I take these vitamins, I'm going to be well. And all of a sudden, they're all separate again. There's not actually a holistic whole anymore. It's this mentality of, I don't feel good, make me better. And there's a real hunger that exists for, relieve me of my suffering, because my suffering is bad. The same way, pain is bad. Discomfort is bad. What I need is to feel good. And so I think that the wellness space is moving into a space that is, on some levels, no different than a Western medical space in some ways, which is make me better.
Right.
And sedate my pain and make me feel better. And while I have lived in that space too. I'm not separate from it by any chance, but like by any, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not separate from it. And I have a different perspective on it now, which is the wellness space. The wellness space is becoming another way to divert our attention from actually becoming healthy. And what I mean by that is that pain, discomfort, even suffering, they're signs to us that something is out of balance. And they're designed to bring us into a space in ourselves where we can awaken our intrinsic wisdom to begin to shift our patterns to heal. And instead, we are turning off the alarm and we're getting sicker.
Yeah, like what I hear in that, it's beautifully said. It's like we're taking this wellness place was a lot of it's about recognizing that we're one with everything, we're not separate, and it's a certain amount of self-healing, and we're moving that to an outsourcing modality again. There's something wrong with me. I'm going to use the word, maybe I'm broken or whatever, but I'm now going to outsource this. Maybe it's going to be Reiki that fixes me, or I'm going to talk to my shaman, or I'm going to do this journey because that will fix what's wrong with me, versus looking for our innate ability to heal ourselves through what are effectively self-healing modalities. And just reminding me of a conversation I had with someone I'm working with this week that got to this conclusion that, what's wrong with me is this, I'm having all these flashbacks of my childhood. And it's this inner child, or the little boy in me. He's broken. And I need to go fix him. That's the way forward. Who do I talk to fix him? And we had this conversation. I think the problem is that you don't understand. There's nothing that needs fixing. There's nothing that's broken. It's that you don't understand that little boy in you, and you are perfect as you are. You've just forgotten that, and you've forgotten how to love that. And there's no modality out there that's going to teach you how to love the inner child and love yourself. That's something you're going to have to find a way to do it. And it's going to be a self-healing. Reiki's not going to do it. Going and spending all this money on all these modalities, probably not going to solve the issue that you don't believe you're not perfect.
Yep. And I would say, I think I would probably say the same thing, but say it a little bit differently, which is that all of these modalities that exist out there, I can't speak to all of them. I can speak to some of them. They're beautiful healing modalities. And as Michael Brown would say, as an example, nobody can feel for you. The only person that can feel for you is you. So if you go to seek outside of you these modalities to help create some relief, by all means, I do. If my body hurts, I'll go for a massage or I'll do whatever. But the intention is, can we bring our bodies back into a place where our muscles can soften, our nervous systems can quiet, with the intention of then having the capacity to go inside and meet those parts of ourselves that are hurting, rather than going with the intention that in seeing this particular practitioner, I'm going to heal. Mm-hmm. The job of the practitioner is not to heal us. The job of the practitioner is to share a modality that they have learned, to invite your body to come back into a state of balance so that you can do the work that you need to meet that little boy, if I was going to use your analogy. And I don't know, the word perfect for me doesn't resonate, but can I meet that little boy who's screaming for attention? Can I meet or in need of being witnessed or heard or whatever it is? Can I now have the space? Can I be the space in my body that is now calm enough and present enough to be able to now be here for him? Because the massage I went to, as an example, turned the alarm bells in my own body down enough so that I can be present.
Yeah.
That's an amazing way to use the wellness space. But the way that we use the wellness space is, I'm unhappy, I'm agitated, I'm frustrated, I'm hurting, I'm whatever. I'm going to my acupuncturist, my naturopath, my Ayurvedic practitioner, my cranial sacral massage therapist, whatever it is, and they're going to make me better. Well, nobody can make you better.
No, ultimately, we have to be our own healers, and even that comes with Western medicine and its effectiveness. But we are our own healers. We can't outsource healing. We can ask for advice, we can ask for direction, guidance, but ultimately, we need to heal ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great spot to take a break. And we'll come back in a minute.
Sounds good. Welcome back. So we've been talking a little bit about my experience with the wellness space, and I'm curious, you say that you're kind of a newbie to the space, and you really are a newbie to the space. What brought you into the wellness space?
Yeah, and it's interesting. It so relates to the last conversation we had just about the outsourcing of it. And so I first came into the wellness space in 2019, and we've talked about this in previous shows, but from this place of desperation, I was struggling with mental health and addiction and all sorts of other things, and the routes I was taking to that point were not yielding success. And so I got very open. I was willing to try anything, and I went away to a wellness center in the US called Mirabelle, which is a phenomenal place, by the way. And I signed up for everything. Crystal work, shamanic healing, Psyche, Reiki, like stuff I'd never heard of before.
Did you say Psyche Reiki?
Psyche, Reiki, yeah. Whatever was on the list, I did it. I was submerged underwater. I was listening to dolphins, whatever they had, I signed up for it. The point was like, are you sure you want to sign up for this much stuff? And I was like, you don't understand how screwed up I am. Yes. But that was my first foray into it. And I had some really incredible experience there, particularly with shamanic healers, that really pried the door open to me, saying, hey, there's something about this. There's something here that I've been missing my whole life, and I'm interested. That was my initial experience with it, the outsource model. And in my head, I was going to go back to this place every 6 months for the rest of my life because that's what I needed. I ended up coming home, and I ended up going through a recovery process to get my healing journey started through a proper recovery facility. And from that point, I was going to jump back into these modalities again. My eyes were wide open to it. I was excited. I walked out of that place into COVID. There was no going anywhere. There was no going seeing any practitioners. All the stuff that I thought I was going to do to learn the space, it all got shut down. And what's interesting, what that forced me to do, because I had a thirst for it now, was figure it out on my own. I started devouring books like the Bhagavad Gita, A Course in Miracles, various others authors, Ram Dass. I started learning about these healing modalities. I did a Kundalini yoga training course predominantly online. But mostly what I was doing was trying to understand what these things were, not relying on an outside practitioner, and then trying to do them myself, trying to integrate what I understood from them through my own psyche and bring those practices into my own sphere of life. And effectively, as we talked about, healing myself. And that's been my whole foray into the wellness space. It hasn't been a big external adventure for me. It's been a massive internal adventure as I brought in all these various modalities and used them in different capacities to heal myself. Checking out some, thinking, well, that wasn't for me, didn't resonate, and letting it go. Bringing that one in and like, oh, that one felt great. I'm getting something from that. And then sticking with that for a prolonged period of time. And that's really been my experience and continues to be my experience in this space. I've become very much self-directed in what I do and don't do a lot of outsourcing of my healing anymore.
Yeah, what I find interesting about that is that because of the circumstances, but also I think because of the nature of who you are, because you're incredibly disciplined as a person, what you've done is you've taken a tremendous amount of personal responsibility over your health and wellness. And that's really not the common thread for most people. You have an incredible capacity to devour a book and apply what you learn. We're not really being taught how to do that. Mm-hmm. We're being taught as a society, what we're being taught is that if we're uncomfortable, something out there is going to make us feel better. You've done the opposite, which is I've watched you through this process, and it's an incredible process because, you say you've devoured books. If you could have been eating them, you would have been eating them. I was blown away watching you. But I think that what you're speaking to is the crux of what I wish we could share and impart, which is that every healing modality out there that exists is really designed to bring us inside. It's designed to teach us what feels resonant and what doesn't, and to align with what's resonant and in integrity and move away from what's out of alignment. And if we could all take personal responsibility for our health and wellness, the level of disease out there would be diminished tremendously. But there's something about the wellness space that's really become a consumer space rather than a wellness space per se. And it needs to shift. Because people are sicker than they've ever been. And there's more out there for us to be well than there's ever been. We have access to more than we ever have. And so, in my work, as an example, my intention is, my little area of work is, how can we learn to feel what we most naturally want to turn away from so that we can heal? And I think that's a huge portion of where our shift needs to happen. Right now, psychedelics are huge in the wellness space.
Before you go there, I just want to clear. So what you're talking about is, instead of like going to seeing somebody, I'm feeling this discomfort, take it away. It's like, no, I need to move through this discomfort. I'm not asking for someone to take it away. I want some help and guidance to move through it, to understand it.
Yeah, I would say I would change that a little bit and say, go and seek the help that you're looking for, because there are people out there who would love nothing more than to support you and gift you with the wisdom that they've learned over time to help you heal. Go look for that help, but recognize that the only way to truly heal is to be where you are and get really curious about what's happening in your body, your mind, your spirit. And it's not about moving through it. It's just about meeting it. Because moving through it assumes there's a destination to get to, right? It's like, can you be with anxiety and develop a relationship with it? Can you be with pain and develop a relationship with it? Can you get really curious about what your body, your mind, your heart is speaking to you, instead of turning your back on it? Because in turning your back on it, or wanting to sedate or make it go away, you're actually turning your back on the very mechanism that's designed to wake you up and heal you. So I'll give you an example, right? Like, I have a tremendous amount of pain. Actually, today I don't, but I've had a tremendous amount of pain in my body for going on 2 years. Really tremendous in the last 6 months. And would I like to not be in pain? Oh yeah, sure. But there's something about meeting this pain that has transformed me. There's a curiosity and a softness with which I'm meeting my body, instead of wanting to fight with the pain. And it's taking me to some really powerful places inside where, while I may feel pain, my nervous system is quieter than it's ever been. I feel more peaceful than I've ever felt. And my guess is that my body is trying to communicate and teach me something. It's making me slow down. It's asking me to be more quiet. I'm not able to avoid myself by exercising or busyness, because my body's not liking that right now. And my pain has become my teacher. Now, I could have spent the last 6 months going to see every practitioner on the planet to make my pain go away. And I've seen some. But I'm not interested in sedating the pain. I have medication for the pain. And I'm traveling with it. It's in my backpack. I know that it's there if I need it, because the pain gets too bad for me to experience. But I can't bring myself to take it right now, because I want to know what the pain has to teach me.
I think I use the words through, and that's probably That's I think there's masculine energy in that to a certain extent. And I go from like Marcus Aurelius, what stands in the way becomes the way. And that's a bit how I see all this as well. It's like and whether we're meeting it, working through it, we're heading towards it. We're not running away for it. We're not seeing it as this thing that needs to be avoided or removed. We're saying the obstacle is the way. Whatever's happening with me is the path that I'm being asked to walk for whatever reason, whether it's for healing, for enlightenment, doesn't matter, but meeting it through it. It's the same idea as not getting rid of it, not trying to run away from it.
So what you're speaking to is you're turning toward it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're meeting it head on. I mean, that's what we talked about in a previous episode when we were talking about your shoulder.
Yeah.
Your shoulder became your teacher.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Fear's like that too. You want to run away from fear, walk through the fear.
Yeah.
And we'll get the lesson we need from it.
Yep. 100%.
You're about to get really controversial there, I think, with as you talked about plant medicine and psychedelics.
I know. I'm not very controversial. No, I was just going to say, I think that there's what's happening with psychedelics right now for me is very reminiscent to what's happening, what happens, let's just say what happened with Prozac way back when. And I say that because psychedelics have been shown to have some incredible capabilities at working with mental health issues. And psychedelics have been used for eons in various parts of the world through, rites of passage and different sort of developmental growth experiences. And they've been used by shamans who have been really connected to plants and to land and to the medicine that's associated with that. And what we're watching now in the mental health space is that we've seen something that could work to help work with trauma, to help work with depression and anxiety, to help work with different mental health disorders. And all of a sudden, it's like we're going gangbusters down this path of psychedelics where, people in our world are doing journey after journey after journey after journey using medicine, which I put in quotation marks, because while these medicines have the potential to be incredibly powerful and have shown to be, they're now being, in many cases, misused because we want the quick fix. We want the answer quickly. And misuse, these medicines become really dangerous. Mm. And so for me, what I was going to say is there's this place within us with everything. Psychedelics are just an example of it, where we're uncomfortable. We don't want to be uncomfortable. And so we'll go and grab the next thing that's going to be our answer. And the challenge is that there are no quick fixes. It might feel quick in the moment, but there are no quick fixes because we need to develop the foundation within us to be able to actually hold and integrate any of these different modalities. So I'm not feeling well and I go to a sound healing, let's just say. I walk out of that sound healing and my nervous system feels incredibly calm because my parasympathetic nervous system was just tended to. I go back into the car, I get into traffic, I go back home, I deal with family interactions, and I go back into my normal pattern of being, which is more of a sympathetic response or a stress response. If I think that the only way that my system is going to know how to calm itself is to go back to that sound healing, then I'm going to start traveling the world and going to sound healings because I like the way it feels. But the sound healing experience is designed to bring your body into a relaxation response for you to know what that feels like. And then your job is to become personally responsible for learning how to calm your nervous system.
So the way you describe sound healing, it's not a lot different than going to a doctor and taking a pill for anxiety. It's going to get rid of the anxiety when you take the pill. And so When you're feeling anxiety, you're going to continue taking pills, and that's going to be your way to deal with the symptom of anxiety or whatever else it is. It's not getting at the root of it, of what you're meant to be looking at.
No, exactly. But you see, the modality of sound healing is actually an incredible modality. I love it. It's beautiful.
As are many medications on the market.
100. You need to go there.
Yeah.
100%.
Just drawing that. I'm just drawing that
the parallel.
That's right.
So
temporarily.
100%. But it's not just sound healing. It's psychedelic medicine. It's Chinese medicine. It's massage. It's natural. It's all of those things. You know, you can go and spend thousands of dollars at a naturopath, but if you're not then going to take what you've done and shift your lifestyle, the naturopath becomes the drug, right? We're looking for the drug, and what needs to change is that. We need to remember that our bodies have an inherent capacity within them to heal, and that each of these modalities is an invitation for us to enter into that space in our bodies. And then we need, like you did, to take personal responsibility for learning how to create that environment in our lives through daily practice. As an example, you know, you go out and sound healing becomes something that is of interest to you, or you go out and yoga or breath work. We'll use breath work. Let's use breath work. Mm-hmm. I go out and I do a breath work journey with a breath work practitioner. I move a lot of energy. It feels really good. Well, the next week I want to go and do another breath work journey, or the next month I'm going to go and do another breath work journey. Well, guess what? You have access to your breath every day, all the time. What would it be like to take 15 minutes out of your day and breathe yourself?
Right.
Like, we have those capacities.
The practitioner is showing you how to do it, and you get some training, and then you can do it your own. You don't have to keep outsourcing it.
You know what? It's great to go back and do more work so that you can then be with yourself even more deeply. But yeah, can we take what we're learning and actually apply it in our own lives rather than being consumers of it? Can we learn to become practitioners of it? And I think that's the shift that needs to happen, right? Is that the expertise, there are people who are experts in their fields. So can we go and learn from those experts and then become experts of ourselves? Yeah.
And, you know, it's interesting. And that word expert, it's got me thinking about something, because I think one of the observation you brought up earlier is that we seem to be spending more and more money in the wellness space on these modalities. And I would observe, correlated to that, I don't have an observation of mental health improving across any category. And we're spending more money both in sort of traditional therapies as well as wellness. But it appears that all across every category, mental health challenges are on the rise. And so I'm not saying there's causation. I'm just saying it's something to observe. But where I'm going with this is in the wellness space, because it's expanding so rapidly, so many new entrants are coming into it. There's not necessarily certifications or whatnot. I'm going to talk from my own point of view. I think there needs to be awareness of what we're playing with in this space too. It's not zero risk. It's not risk free. Yes, we're not going down the route of traditional Western medicine that has, like, you know, double-blind placebo studies that point out what side effects are, recognize the chemical change in the body. In many of these wellness modalities, we're playing with consciousness, and that may sound very woo-woo, but I guess in my worldview, in my understanding, it's very real. We can get into yoga modalities and have a Kundalini awakening, which can have profound psychological implications on somebody. But I use plant medicine just as a specific example because it's very contained. And again, I'm going to speak. This might sound very, very woo-woo, but I'm going to speak from my view.
You keep talking about woo-woo. You don't sound woo-woo at all.
I think I sound woo to my old self.
I'm a little more woo.
Yeah. But so, from a consciousness perspective and from a quantum morphogenetic physics perspective, we exist within a 15-dimensional time matrix. That's what we are. That's what our manifestation is. And we are, for the most part, our reality is grounded in 3 dimensions. That's what we're experiencing. That's where our grounding is. That's how we interact. The other dimensions still exist surrounding us. We're just not aware of them. They express themselves in a way that's not physical manifestation. We'll just leave it at that. What plant medicines do is they give us access to beyond 3 dimensions. Various plant medicines give us access to different type of dimensionalities. They give us access to entities that exist in those various planes, the energies, the frequencies, the vibrations. It's beyond our understanding of our experience in the 3D world. And so that's what's happening when we potentially go on a plant medicine journey. We go to a place that we don't have any experience with. We experience and come back, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. That's marvelous. We get to experience beyond what we're experiencing now, and maybe that's what we're looking for. The problem is if we're not ready to integrate that, if our psyche and mental facilities can't comprehend what's occurring there, and then we come back into our 3D plane, we potentially start losing our grounding to this reality in a profound way. The potentially more and more you do these various journeys, whether it's plant medicine, even breath work, or something like Kundalini yoga, then more and more we're potentially eroding the base of the plane of existence we're in right now. And it can have catastrophic consequences for our psyches. And I don't know how much that's being talked about or looked about. And if people are aware when they're going on and doing these things, they're potentially degrounding themselves in a major, major way. So there's costs and there's benefits to all of it.
100%. And I think that there's lots of talk in the field of plant medicine around the significance and importance of integration. And a lot of people who are working responsibly in the field are doing a lot of that integration work to support what you're speaking to be able to help create the foundation. And inherently, I think there are also risks in the field because the field is it's very young.
Yeah.
It's very young, and it's because of the power of certain medicines, the field, rather than being treated with I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use, rather than being treated with reverence, the medicines, on some level, it's a fad. And the fad part scares me.
Right. So instead of going to Peru and doing a journey with a shaman who's been practicing for 40 years, the fad is I'm going to do an apartment at Yaletown with somebody.
Yeah. And I think that there are people who can definitely take you through that. I mean, we're getting out of our scope here, but I would say if I bring it back to sort of what we've been talking about, if I'm looking for an answer out there and I'm outsourcing my power to somebody else, then I am putting myself at risk. And I think the biggest takeaway here is whatever it is that you're interested in, wherever it is that your psyche is sort of taking you, whatever charms you and is calling to you, honor that. But know that nobody outside of you is an expert on you. You're the expert on you. And the single best thing that you could do is learn from people around you and then begin to take responsibility for your own wellness by beginning to explore the things that you're learning rather than giving your power away. Because otherwise, rather than becoming somebody who is tending to themselves and cultivating wellness, which is really what we're doing, right? If we're working with ourselves, we're working at cultivating our health. rather than doing that, you're becoming a consumer of wellness, and that's not going to make you well. Right?
Yeah, and I really appreciate you brought us back on that, from that tangent. And I'm going to close with this and add to that is that ultimately, my experience has been we are our own healers, and it doesn't matter whether that's through the wellness space or actually through a traditional medical space. Our first step is understanding things like, what are we eating? Are we getting exercise? Am I meditating? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I doing all these other things? And if we're not doing that and we're not well, and then we go to a doctor and look for a solution, we're outsourcing our power. Much in the way he's talked about, if I'm feeling emotionally dysregulated or something going different in life, and I don't want to go through a traditional Western medical doctor, and I want to go through the wellness space, it's the same thing. We're outsourcing our power away when we ourselves are our own healers, and we have the ability to heal ourselves. And these folks are all just to help us in that journey, but ultimately we need to take personal responsibility for it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And so with that, what I would encourage you to do is go find the things that feel good to you. You know, for me, that changes over time. For me right now, working with my breath is my go-to. It's what I'm enjoying the most in this moment. And so it's where my energy is going. Find the thing that interests you, that feels good to you, that you want to practice and work with, and go see somebody if you want to. There's some incredible people out there who are working, whose intentions are really to help you to heal. But then take what you learn and go home and find a way to practice. Discipline yourself to engage your body's wisdom in the process. And then you get to become, rather than becoming a consumer of wellness, you get to begin to cultivate inner wellness. And I think that's really, like, we have capacity, but it's time for us again to become, we'll use the word personally responsible, I suppose, and advocate for our own wellness, not just by speaking to it or asking for it, but by cultivating it internally.
Beautiful. Great way to end. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.